Hello and welcome to another episode of Mysteries with a History, where I'll take you on a wild ride into the unknown, the strange, and the mysterious. Like you, I have questions, and like you, I want answers. I'd like to say hi to everyone in the live chat today. Brian, Dark Horse Tales, Corey James, thank you so much for being a YouTube member. Jonacide, Arlene, Deborah, Hides in Long Grass, Less Sweet. How is everyone doing today? Today, we are talking about extra dimensionals. What are extra dimensionals, you may ask? The extra dimensionals are non terrestrial sentient life forms who are visiting our dimension of time and space as beings from outside of our plane of physical time and space. For example, from outside of our universe, such as other universes in our multiverse. Now, I often wonder if advanced civilizations, maybe type 2 civilizations, utilize other dimensions like hyperspace conduits for travel around the universe, and if so, they would be interdimensionals rather than extra dimensionals who would originate from another dimension. Now, before we go deep into today's topic, let me bring in my extra special co host, Mr. Jimmy Church from Fade to Black.
Oh
Jamie.
man, how you doing?
You know what? Today was an extra good day to start off with because I went and I looked in my little mailbox and I got a package. Oh, actually, two packages.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty excited. So like whenever I get anything from the mail, I'm like a child. I have to open it in the car. Okay? I'm like, "What is it?" And then turns out I got a ginormous box of noodles. And not just noodles. I mean, this is a lot of noodles, okay? All right. But then I had another box of snacks. Now it was full when I got the box. Now there's only a few left, and okay. I am that child that I will open everything, take one bite, and then put it on the side to see if I'll like it for later. Like it's dreadful, okay, but that's just how I am. And and it all came from Mr. Jimmy Church.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Thank you. And you know what? I'm with my noodles, I have to eat them with chopsticks. And I got those too in the box.
Yes, you did. Right on. And I think everybody, and I've said this so many times, everybody should have a good set of chopsticks. I mean,
Oh,
that is just it's part of life. Everybody should have a good set of chopsticks. So, and if you are going to have a ramen Twitter feed, you need to back it up. You need to back it up. You need to back it up and
I
you back that up with
do.
chopsticks.
I do. The last pair of chopsticks I ever bought was actually I've never bought a pair of chopsticks. I stole mine from my dad right before I moved out of the house. And I've been using those ever since.
Right on,
So
right
now
on,
I have
right
like really fancy ones. But how are you doing, Jimmy? Tell me.
I am fantastic and just came off of tonight continuing, but a great first week of 2022 with Fade to Black. So all of that has been amazing. And tonight we close out the week with Linda Moulton Howe. I'm in a great mood. Got my Spacely Space Sprockets shirt on, and you got your gifts. Life is good. Life is good. And I'm very excited about what we're going to be talking about today. Plus, what a great way to launch off into the new year. So, I asked you last week. I remember. I don't know, what we're going to talk about in the upcoming week. Cristina hits me with that. And but I asked you last week, how do you choose your subjects? How do you, because it's always a lot of fun, and I'm more interested in how your brain works. Like today, you've got a baseball hat on backwards, so you're keeping the cranium warm. You're obviously thinking, but I'm very curious. I don't want to know, but I'm very curious how you navigate through this subject about UFOs and ET and contact and disclosure and everything around it. It's very interesting. And then we land this week on interdimensionals, which is a fascinating, fantastic subject, and well done. Well done. I'm very excited about the show today. How did you go about your research for what we're about to talk about?
I mean, I try to hit everything, and then when I was doing more research about extra dimensionals, it seems like a lot of the shows that we've covered here on Mysteries with a History kind of falls under the umbrella of extra dimensionals or even interdimensionals. But
Right.
with this entire field, the UFO phenomenon, I there is so much to learn, and I'm always learning. You can never ever stop learning. You can never ever stop reading books or talking to people. So I think this is a great place to go ahead and not only research these topics, but then share it with those that have the exact same questions as we do.
Sure, sure. And we're going to be talking about a lot of things today that are going to almost uh, be a little bit repetitive because they overlap into each one of these presentations that we're going to go through. But also, instead of going all out in the beginning, a little bit of explanation. I'm talking about for me, and then how this dovetails into each one of these specific cases and subjects. The other part is uh, I I have fallen into the interdimensional aspects of all of this quite naturally for my own experiences and my own research and people that I have interviewed over the years because the same transitions that we are seeing today and the subject that we're going to be talking about interdimensionals and what this actually means is is the way that I have seen the UFO community slowly evolve and arrive because it's not just ET, by the way. It's a lot of other things. NDEs, Bigfoot, ghost, entities, bumps in the night, voices, things, as well as the physical side of things that we see. So, craft and whatnot. But the suggestions of this transition are not new. The suggestions of what this phenomenon, part of it may be interdimensionals, has been talked about for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. And a lot of people don't know about that aspect of the research that was going on in 1950 and 1960 and 1970. Certainly today, because we are so much smarter and we discuss these subjects, now we have science, we have physics, we have our own experiences, we have our own eyes and our own testimony, and things are pushing slowly into this other area. And I find it absolutely fascinating. I really do. And I'm going to turn things over to you, but when I first got into UFOs, 1970, back then, it was very much centered on physical craft arriving here from somewhere else. And everything was based on that. And that was the landings, the sightings, the description, the materials, the video, the photographs. All of this was pointing in that direction. And we didn't understand physics and space and time like we do today. And one of the biggest questions that everybody had in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s is how are they getting here? It would take so long. How long are these crafts? How how long do these beings live? Do they live for millions of years? How is this? And it was like this big question that we had hanging over us, trying to answer the most fundamental question of them all. How do they do it? How do they pull that off? What is the propulsion systems? What are the biological entities like? How are they able to do this and face the immense amount of time that it would take to travel here. One of the things, and then we're going to jump right into the first case. One of the fundamental things, I keep saying fundamental because it's always back to the basics, right? And my back to the basics thought pattern was, okay, there's the flying saucer. You say that you went on it. Did they have beds? People talk about chairs, right? And control. Did they have beds? Where did they sleep? Was there a dining room table? What did they eat? Where was all the food stored? That's, you jump in an RV with your family on vacation, first concern, beds, right? It's like, then where do we put all the food? Well, if you're going to be traveling the universe and jumping around inside of a galaxy, certainly there has to be that part of it. A small flying saucer with a little seat in it and nothing else going on doesn't make any sense, does it? Unless, so let's jump into this, okay? It's absolutely fascinating to me. Where are the beds? Where are the blankets? Where are the pillows? Where are the sheets? What were they doing with that? I mean, I need a bed. So there you go. All right, Cristina, let's jump into this. What have you got first?
Well, on that thought, maybe not all entities sleep the way we do. Maybe they don't need a bed. Maybe they don't need blankets. Maybe they don't excrete waste the way we do. So it's hard to think about. I wouldn't say hard, but it you have to think outside of the box to try to consider having answers, because we can't consider them to be just like us in every aspect. Now, before we kind of go deep into today's stories, I want to talk about some pretty prominent people in the field. First of them is Michio Kaku, and he talks about the other dimensions other than our three known dimensions. Now we're considering four after Albert Einstein stating that the fourth dimension deals with time, but Michio Kaku talks on closer to truth a little bit more into depth. And he says, what if dark matter is just another galaxy in a different dimension, a parallel dimension from ours? Scientists and astronomers state that dark matter makes up the majority of invisible mass in our universe. What if it is just normal matter in a parallel universe from our own?
That's right.
And this is a big question that astronomers are asking right now. They only recently kind of found dark matter. They're like, what is this? We can tell mathematically that it's there, but we can't see it. But we know it makes up the majority of the matter that is in our universe. So it makes you, again, have to think outside of the box of the things that we might already know of so far and consider, well, what if it's something that we have yet to discover? What if we need some more advanced technology to get us there? And with technology, and as time progresses, and as people's minds grow, how we view the world changes nearly every decade. Nearly every decade. Just 30 years ago, there were no such thing as exoplanets. Like, they weren't a thing. And then now we know, and we're constantly finding more every single day. And what, like, the count's 4,000 or something more than that? It's unbelievable. So I want to start off today's show with a story talking exactly what we just mentioned. And the great scientists of the 18th century Europe often investigated claims of stones falling from the sky, but were very skeptical of the occurrence. When a number of stones were brought to them over the years by farmers who claimed they fell from the sky, the scientists looked at them, touched them, examined them with limited scientific technology, and at that time, they just shook their heads, thinking that simply is not possible. The top scientific minds during the 8th century could not accept the idea that stones could fall from the sky, so they labeled these claims as foolish, hoaxes, or the products of an overreactive imagination. At about the same time in the United States, Native American medicine men from the Hopi and Pawnee tribes claimed that in their medicine pouches they had star stones, actual stones that fell from the stars, which they used for healing since they contained powerful magic. Once again, the scientists at that time considered it primitive superstition because it was impossible for a stone to fall from the sky. Well, it turns out that that the stones recovered by the farmers in Europe and the star stones of the medicine men were actually meteorites, and they did fall from the sky. The scientists and the learned people at the time told everyone that it was nonsense to believe that a rock could fall from the sky, but today we know that it is possible and that the keepers and professors of knowledge at that time were wrong. There is an old saying that goes, being a genius and very well educated does not guarantee that you will be correct in all of your assumptions. You might just be dead wrong. And if you look closely at this story, it sounds a great deal to what is happening in the academic world concerning the attitude of UFOs and the paranormal phenomenon, and exactly what we're talking about today. Just a few decades ago, people wouldn't even consider other dimensions, saying, nope, there's only three, that's all you get. But then Albert Einstein came along and said, well, maybe there's another dimension, the fourth dimension, where time exists. And then now, as research continues to grow and the string theory was, I would say, founded, because I don't know if you can discover that, but it was kind of more founded. They were saying, well, there actually might be 11 dimensions, maybe even 23 dimensions. We don't know until our technology advances. And I think that's just a great way to start today's show.
Okay. It always makes you wonder what the ancients knew. And I'm talking about the indigenous tribes and cultures around the world. Fascinating aspect to all of this. It's like they were open to extra dimensions and parallel worlds and life after death and spirits and things. And for some reason, modern culture, probably because of inventions and things, just moved away from that and moved into this, this physical thing where we had to have physical things, homes, carts, wagons, invent steam engines. Everything was just like in the now. But back to this. Michio, and I'm in the middle of, I think I've read all of his books. I'm in the middle of one that was released about 2 years ago. I don't know if he's got a newer one out since then. Anyway, he speaks about this in the book. And now, as we get to the interdimensional part of this, one of the things that he goes over and over again is looking at previous physicist research going back to the late 1800s through today on the aspects of traveling space at these great distances, and not only how ET would be doing it, but how we could do it as well, heading in the other direction and returning. Time travel gets involved in other things, but the ability, now I bring up beds and sleep and things. Look, I find it impossible, no matter what ET may be, interdimensional or physical or robot, it doesn't matter to me. I can't picture a small craft with a seat in it and somebody sitting in that seat and not doing anything for a million years. Right? I mean, just no. Unless it's purely a robot, but some kind of android. But how would that happen where you're only sitting in that seat for 10 seconds? Right? So now you don't have a need for a bed, right? Where you get into the craft and you just go, and then you walk out of the craft 10 seconds later and you're on the other side of the galaxy. That aspect to all of this makes a lot of sense, in that however they are doing it, it's easy, right? It's not a complicated thing. And Cristina, this is the best way that I can explain it. If you went back, you went to check your mailbox, right? and you just got those packages in the mail from another country. Those packages arrived, and how those packages got from there to you in no short order. If you tried to explain that to somebody 5,000 years ago, they wouldn't get it. You're going to have to explain the internet. You're going to have to explain your car. You're going to have to explain how you got to the post office and back. I'm assuming you drove to a post office, but and that you just jumped in your car and you stuck a key in it and you started the engine and it's burning with gas and you're driving down the road and you come out. But that is all easy for you to do. For somebody to send you those packages, it's easy. 5,000 years ago, this is like godlike. It's the same thing with ET. Whatever they are doing and jumping in that seat and crossing a galaxy in no time at all is easy to them. Just like me going to the store and getting a cheesecake and driving back home. It's easy. So now let's flip this over one more time, because that, when I say where are the beds, well, that would take care of the bed issue, wouldn't it? Right?
It would.
It would. Now let's flip this over one more time, and that is the interdimensional aspect to this, where today people go out, including myself, and see something appear and disappear. Could be a craft in the sky. It could be Bigfoot. It could be a ghost. It could be an orb. It could be an ET being crossing through a wall.
A Skinwalker.
This is where the interdimensional aspect to this. Now, it sounds so fantastical to us, right? And then you just look at it just a little bit further. Just take one little step and understand that all of these are suggesting the exact same thing. Something is going non-physical to physical. Something is going non-physical to non-physical. Something is going from one dimension to the other and appearing from us and then going back to wherever it came from. And is it a parallel world? Is it an extra dimension? That's where the interdimensional aspect of this comes into play. But everybody is seeing this, including myself. So now, where are we today? Well, when we look at this, where this kind of conversation would absolutely be a ghost story, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. This is a ghost story. This is orbs. This is a spirituality thing in the middle of a desert and things moving around, lighting up in the sky and disappearing. It's gods, it's spirits, it's angels. It's all of it would explain all of that. But today, with physics like Michio Kaku and Brian Greene and Sean Carroll and Isaac Arthur and others, where they are discussing exactly what we are talking about right now. This is exactly when we talk about string theory and what it suggests, and when we talk about theoretical physics today and what it suggests and what the research and the numbers are showing us, what those scientists are telling us is what we already know. That all of this around us may be an interdimensional situation that we're dealing with, and we are coming in and out of wavelengths and seeing things. And the other part about this is maybe these interdimensional beings that show up, maybe they think we're interdimensional. Maybe we are stepping into their world and they are freaking out, right? It could be the very same thing. And so we've got to figure out that very simplistic aspect to this that explains all of it, which would be the theory of everything, and something like string theory, which may turn out to be the theory of everything. But that's where we are today. So let's continue. Let's Can we jump forward to Jacques Valet?
Well, but before that, two things I want to mention. First off, to your point, it says maybe our, large hadron collider is smashing the walls through between dimensions,
Yes.
and that's a possibility. Now, thank you so much, Gary, for the super sticker, and Sir Grizz. Thank you so much. You guys are fantastic. Now, Jimmy, where did you want to jump to?
I want to jump to Gary Voorhees. The Gary Voorhees is hanging out. Gary Voorhees. How you doing, Gary? Good to see you, my man. Okay, what was your question?
Well, you wanted to jump somewhere. Tell me,
Oh,
where do you want to take this?
Jacques Valet.
Yes.
And Jacques Valet is required reading by anybody that is watching this show. If you are interested in the subject at all, you need to go and check out all of his work and all of his research. It goes without saying that he's very respected and very educated, and his focus on life isn't just UFOs. It's venture capital, machine learning. He wrote some of the very first artificial intelligence programs going back to the 1960s. He's a Silicon Valley investor, and he understands technology. He's a very, very, very bright mind. He's amazing to sit down and talk to. So go and read all of his books. But his research going back to the early 70s was so revolutionary and so forward thinking. And I'm going to paraphrase for Jacques. Jacques, if I just tear this apart, I apologize in advance. But my own primitive mind, this is how he has explained it to me, and certainly in his books too as well, is that, I paraphrase, maybe we've got all of this wrong. Maybe it's interdimensional. Maybe these crafts, maybe these beings, maybe what we are talking about here is not what we think that it is, which is physical nuts and bolts craft with biological entities traveling the universe. That maybe there's something else that would help us understand what is going on, and that maybe these beings and these craft are interdimensional. They're arriving here from another dimension and showing up and leaving. And I think that most of the researchers out there that could grasp or wrap their head around this suggestion, which was unbelievable, we kind of got it. We did. But it didn't take hold. That was 40 years ago.
Okay, a while back.
Yeah, we are in 2022. And it was such a fascinating, just revolutionary way to. Now, today, we look at Valet's work, which he continues to speak about this, of course, and has written other books about this, of course. But we get it today because we do have the physics to prop up this idea and help support it, where it doesn't become so
outlandish.
Yeah, completely outlandish. Where today, it's just like, wait a minute here. Jacques has been talking about this since the dawn of time, right? And yes, we do need to sit down and address this. And to take my words at face value is great, but go back and read how Jacques and his reasons for this, based on science, arrived at these conclusions so many decades ago. It's absolutely fascinating, Christina. Fascinating part of this.
It is. And I read one of his books for today's show called Dimensions. And I've not just that book, but I've read a handful of books for to use for the research for today. And I will list them in the information section below the video window for those that want to go ahead and read those books as well, because there are a lot of books that cover this subject. And what you said, oh, and by the way, they're already listed if you guys want to check them out. But what you mentioned about Jacques Valet, what you paraphrased, is practically correct. He mentioned it in his book, Dimensions, everything that you said. And Jacques Valet related that this hypothesis also explains other phenomena that seem to appear and disappear, such as instances of supernatural beings, crypto creatures, ghosts, and demons. To use to us, they seem to appear and disappear, but if these phenomena have permanent existence of any sort, then they must be coming from and going to somewhere else. And I think when you bring in that aspect, when you bring in other dimensions, it makes it a lot easier to go ahead and grasp all of these other features of things that we would consider unexplainable, such as cryptid sightings, ghosts, demons, angels, that people believe to either be superstitious or fantasy or just in holy scriptures, but not necessarily true. When you bring in this little extra ingredient, talking about extra dimensions, it makes it that much easier to go ahead and comprehend and say, you know what, it's very possible, versus saying, no way, that can't be a thing.
Well, yes, and here's the thing. And I don't want to get into a bunch of my own personal experiences. It takes up too much time, and everybody's heard these stories so many times. But I have to bring up one aspect of this for me personally, where the famous, now infamous, famous beer can sighting up in Washington. When I first saw this craft, which again, just so if nobody's heard it, it was about 500, 400 feet tall, and it was spinning, and it looked like a can, and it's going across the sky like this. Okay, and it's so many miles away. Well, 14 miles away. So when this was going down, the whole sighting lasted about 15 seconds, but I couldn't believe my eyes, the size of this and how perfect it was. And it was in the middle of the day. So this is going down. And as I was looking through the binoculars and looking at it with my naked eye, and I'm making this transition back to the binoculars, Steve Murillo sitting next to me says, it just disappeared. Now, wait a minute. And how could something this massive in the middle of a blue, cloudless sky just disappear? I saw it up here. It came out from behind the mountain. But I didn't see probably the most interesting aspect of this entire sighting. I didn't see it disappear. Everybody else did. And Steve's description was that it just phased out. It disappeared. Now, I had to sit back and think about that. How can something that big just disappear? Now we have to then go into all of the other possibilities. And the first thing, I mean, and where I'm still at with this, is something interdimensional just occurred. And I have to think about it in those terms, right? Way beyond what we are used to here on this planet and what we think about, and we're always staying logical. I am now forced into this where I hear about other eyewitness accounts that are just like this. It just phased out. It just disappeared. It just showed up and it just disappeared. Well, now I am that person telling that story. What do I do with this? And I have to arrive at the same conclusion that everybody else has, and what physics is telling us today, that I saw with the other 20 or 30 friends that were with me, that we all saw this. We saw something appear and disappear. This wasn't sleight of hand. This wasn't a magic trick on the Las Vegas Strip, right? This wasn't any of that. This was a ginormous craft in the sky just phasing out and disappearing. And I wish I would have seen that part of it. So now we have to jump into the very serious parts of this. Another parallel world, another universe, some type of matter, antimatter, something that was on our frequency and then out of our frequency again. Was it done with intention? Was it traveling here? Is it always here? Is it still there right now, but we just don't see it? It's in another frequency, right?
So many questions.
Yeah,
I
so
want
many questions. And what Jacques Valet points out here, in what you had just mentioned, is one of the most important things, that they arrived here from somewhere and then went back somewhere. But is that somewhere a great distance, or is that somewhere right in front of us where it exists all the time? We're just not part of that reality. And it's pretty fascinating. And if we go with string theory and we go with some of the theoretical physics out there, this is exactly what they are suggesting, Christina. There's other dimensions out there. We just can't see it.
I mean, those kinds of questions just make life that much more exciting to go ahead and attempt to figure it out. Dan Roach, thank you so much, my friend. Good to see you here, buddy. And you, Jimmy, I mean, you hit so many points that I've written down for today that I want to talk about. Hopefully we can go over everything. But something that you mentioned was intention. And that's a big thing that I want to cover today. So, but before we go into intention, I want to talk about like thoughts and consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So, with when we know from anecdotal accounts that there are some people and even entities that can perform telepathic communication, right? Where you don't need to actually speak, but everything's done through the mind. So, my question would be, are those thoughts entering a different dimension and then coming back into the brain, kind of like in a loop cycle?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the third dimension, in our dimension, we have up, down, left, right. Okay. In the fourth dimension, we have time. But then what about consciousness? Where does that reside?
One of the probably the most fascinating subject for me is consciousness, and one of the reasons why it's so fascinating to me is that these learned professionals out there don't want to talk about it. They just don't want to go there, and that's when I go, why? Right? Your parents are talking about something, and you go, "Hey, what are you guys talking about?" It's none of your business. What now I really want to know, right? And it's just like with anything. When a physicist shuts down the subject, which they do anytime they speak, any conference, any panel, any presentation, the subject of consciousness always comes up because everybody wants to know. And we want to know what these, genius physicists and scientists think about the subject. And it's the same answer. So anyway, right? They just deflect and move on. It is when it comes to physics and science, it's all about measurement and testing and repeating the process, right? The scientific method, and that the consciousness cannot be measured. Therefore, we're not interested. And if we can't measure it and we can't test it, therefore, we're not going to waste our time. Well, wait a minute. The ability for you to say those words, doesn't that interest you? You are able to think about this and have a response. And the reason for that is you have a consciousness thing going on in that, 6 pounds of gray goo up in your skull, and you're not concerned about how this is even possible. Well, I think that consciousness, that thing exists everywhere. It does. It exists in everywhere and in everything throughout the universe. It's not just here. It's not an Earth thing. It's not. It has to exist everywhere. And the reason why I am firmly convinced that consciousness is a universal thing is what science has taught me, and that is entanglement. Entanglement. Now, Not only has entanglement been measured and proven, and very aggressive research is going on right now with entanglement, but the ability for a particle to connect with another particle, either close or on the other side of the universe, and instantaneously react and have a cause and effect between those two particles, says to me that consciousness is the same thing and can achieve the same goals, and that we would be able to entangle two minds together and two sources together from great distances and communicate and understand and see and go out of body. And when we talk about remote viewing or these things, right, parallel world, that is entanglement. Quantum computing, for everybody here, quantum computing happens because of entanglement. Quantum computing happens because of parallel worlds. Quantum computing, which is real, the mere suggestion on how it works says that everything that Jacques Valet or you said today is part of our reality and what is going on, and explains a lot of different things. And that's it. Go and do your quantum computing research. Look at some of the comments that have been made, especially recently, about how quantum computing and qubits actually work and calculate and do their thing. It's because of entanglement and parallel worlds. And it is as science fiction as it gets, but it goes right back to what we're talking about now, which is consciousness, entanglement, and the ability to go somewhere else and have something affected at these great distances. It's incredible. And this is where, for me, this is where I keep myself in a reality check. Because you're going down these rabbit holes and you're just like, how can this be? How can this reappear and disappear? How can this happen? How is consciousness affecting the communication between these craft and others? And right. I just go, well, you know what? Michio Kaku says it's possible, right?
So it must be possible.
Yeah, right. Brian Greene is doing this research right now. Quantum computing works. Qubits are real. Entanglement is real. Parallel worlds are real. It's not science fiction. And here we are. So that keeps me sane. It just lets me know that it's not my imagination going elsewhere.
I am loving all of this. My smile is just getting bigger and bigger with each word. I could talk about this all day. Logan, thank you so much for the super sticker. We will be right back after this.
Hi, I'm Micah Hanks, and let me tell you something. I support Cristina Gomez as a Patreon subscriber, and here's why you should too. She brings all of her unique insights to a whole new generation, and all while she's also going through college. Listen, support Cristina, become a Patreon subscriber today. You won't regret it.
Hey there, it's Cristina. Did you know you can get access to an exclusive extra segment of additional questions and answers with all of my guests, as well as behind-the-scene videos and photos? Ever wonder how I turn my small college dorm apartment into a studio where I can shoot new videos or set up lighting and backdrops for my show, or what camera I use? Yep, that video is there too, where I explain as I go along and also give the story of how I learned to do special video effects and editing. You can get access to all of that and much more by joining my Patreon supporters club. You'll be helping by supporting this channel, my research, and production costs, as well as investing in new shows coming soon. Starting from as little as $5 a month, there are several tiers you can choose from that suit your budget, and each tier carries extra perks and benefits. Join my Patreon club and become a supporter today.
Mark, thank you so much for the super sticker. Thank you. So back to talking about extra dimensionals. What is coming from other dimensions to ours. And how are they doing it? Well, the oldest example of stories of beings coming from a hidden dimension is jinn, also called shadow people. And in one book in particular called Interdimensional Universe, The New Science of UFOs, Paranormal Phenomena, and Other Dimensional Beings by Philip, talked about a whole chapter on jinn. And for those that don't know, I'm just going to give a brief explanation of what they are. So, an ancient legend in the Quran says that God created the physical beings of the universe from matter. He created the jinn from smokeless fire and the angels from light. Living beings reported in contact UFO encounters is usually with jinn. Most people have never heard of the word jinn or djinn, but know the word genie, which is a common name that has been made popular in movies, on television, and in some classic books like the Arabian Nights. The jinn are said to be made from a smokeless fire, which really means to some considered to be plasma, the fourth state of matter. Although the jinn appear in a physical form, they can also take a number of different forms and have the ability to rearrange matter into different substances. They can also manipulate energy and matter, but their power in this area seems to be limited. The Native Americans, as well as other tribal cultures, call them the great tricksters. And it was considered to be very dangerous for an individual to have open communication with them. Now, with jinn, according to the Islamic belief, they can be agents of good and evil, just like every other living thing in the universe.
Mhm.
However, most are evil, it says here. Most are evil and enjoy punishing humans because they feel that God placed humankind in a better dimension. In ancient times, accidents, diseases, and ultimately death were thought to be the results of wrathful jinn. And I've heard quite a few stories. It's actually shadow people was the very first topic I covered on Mysteries with a History. And for those that want to watch it, I definitely recommend it. I go into some more personal stories. But with this in particular, Jinn are one of the first stories that really bring up the conversation of interdimensionals. What do you know about them?
Well, yes, I have. I've done a few shows on the gin, and for me, uh, it 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 represents the gin represents, and I always go watch Aladdin. Watch Aladdin,
Movie.
um, and think about this for a second. The jinn is one part of mythology from a culture that is identical and represents the same things with angels, demons, ghosts, and I'll even jump forward and say things like fairies and leprechauns and stuff that is every culture has got their own version of the jinn. And so if you take each one of these stories, and I'm being very serious here, Christina, you take any one of these stories and Philip and Brogno, whose book that you referred to earlier, you take that or any historical reference to the jinn, angels, demons, leprechauns, fairies, doesn't matter to me, and just insert ET. That's all you got to do. That's exactly what tag in ET, put in interdimensional being, and you've got the exact same story all the way across, and it is what we are seeing today. Today we don't call it the jinn. Today we don't. How would a reappearing and disappearing Bigfoot be represented, 5,000 years ago in a story? Well, probably the jinn, and or an angel or a demon or the devil. And it's just another way to look at all of this. So yeah, I collapse all of this into this one aspect and throw in interdimensional being, throw in little gray alien, throw in ET, and all of these stories make sense. It's exactly what we're talking about today. Today, we label everything just a little bit different, in a more modern context. But that's the simplest way to go and explain all of this. And again, it's a way that I keep myself a little bit sane, where I don't want to go full off into a subject, understanding it a different way. I simplify it. I get to the simplest part of it, apply a little bit of science, and suddenly I have my answers. And so that's what I think the jinn is represented as an interdimensional being, got labeled as jinn. Maybe some of these interdimensional beings were not up to good positive things, and they get written into the mythology this way. But interdimensional being, it's really that simple.
It is. And sometimes labels can be rather confusing. And like you said, in today's world, we label everything. Absolutely everything is labeled. But sometimes they can be pretty similar, if not the same, but have two different names. Deborah, thank you so much for the super sticker. And Deborah says, thanks, guys. Yes, what Jimmy said, the jinn are a genie. Thank you, Disney.
Yeah.
Aladdin from Disney was really good. The cartoon version.
It was awesome, actually. It was awesome.
And the soundtrack is amazing. Now, something that you mentioned before we go into angels, I want to cover, but you mentioned leprechauns, and I just want to tell a really quick funny story. I used to live in Ireland when I was very young, and there were rainbows all the time. So I would force my dad to travel to the end of the rainbow so I could see leprechauns and their pot of gold, but I was never satisfied because we never got to the end of the rainbow, and it was rather disappointing.
The other day, I'm going to check this out. I'm driving on the freeway, and this was on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. But can everybody see this rainbow? Can you see that?
Oh, nice. That's a nice looking rainbow.
And now I can see where it is landing. Check, here's another shot. You can see it now. I can see where it is, right? And I'm driving up to it. Now I'm trying to drive in traffic, but I can see where it's landing right off that. Look at this. Look at this shot. Look at that.
Ooh, very pretty.
Right off of the freeway. And so maybe that's I shot a video too. Here's another shot. Now I'm getting really close to it. I mean, it's right there, landing off of the side of the freeway. You can see the sign, North Hills, right? It's right there. And I'm driving. I'm like, that's the last shot I took. And I thought, man, I'm going to see where I could see it. And I drove past it. And as I got closer and closer and closer, I mean, I'm on it now. I'm right there, and it disappeared. And I think that's a physical thing, once you get up, what causes it, and the sunlight and the spectrum and things. But anyway, I got to the end of the rainbow, man. That was last week. And I had never gotten that close to a rainbow, to the end of the rainbow. And look, I just showed you the pictures. It was right there, and I'm coming up on it. I'm like, this is right there. It is. And then I was going to take the exit. I wanted to drive back and see, I don't know, and to see if I could get out and get into. But there's something in physics there that prevents that. I don't think you can ever get to the end of a rainbow. I was close though, man. I was 50 yards from that sucker. Crazy, huh? Isn't that a great picture?
It is. And it's those little things that just really bring out your inner child. And Deborah asks, did you find the pot of gold, Jimmy?
Yeah, I didn't get that close. But yeah, this last picture, I mean, it's right next to that tree. Everybody look. See that tree? It's like right in front. It's right there.
Yeah, it's so close. It is so close. And,
It was crazy. It was so cool.
I'm jealous. I'm not gonna lie. I'm jealous.
Yeah,
Now,
what's happening?
oh, geez. So we are going to be talking about angels now. We got about another 30 minutes for today's show, and we talked about jinn, which could also, for some, still be classified as demons in some respects, depending on how you want to classify it. But what about angels? So the word angel means messenger of God, and although their origin is surrounded in mystery, they appear to be the oldest race of beings in the cosmos. Angels are mentioned in a number of religious texts, and their role in the protection of humanity goes back before Christianity. In paintings during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance period, angels are shown as being very beautiful. And when you look at them, it's hard to tell if they're a male or female. Now, there are also stories that state that they don't actually have a physical form, but they're actually a being of light instead. But for these paintings, it was easier for people to go ahead and attempt to attach to these mystical beings by placing them in a human form versus just a ball of light that could be a bit more difficult to go ahead and comprehend. Deborah says, Jimmy, that rainbow was a Christmas blessing.
Yeah, it was pretty
So
cool.
cute.
Pretty cool. Let's stay on angels, but here is the picture before. This is me. This is me on Christmas Day. Are you guys ready? As I took the picture of the rainbow. I was driving Christmas gifts around and making contactless Santa deliveries. Okay, so okay, to go back to what I said earlier about inserting ET, you see angel, you see demon, you see this reference, throw in ET, and you've got a pretty crazy explanation of things. I think it's very simple. But there's another part to this, though, where I think this is absolutely extra-dimensional and extra-dimensional extraterrestrial. In that, the messengers of God part, it always seemed to me that these interdimensional beings have information, right? They're teaching, they're helping, and the information is coming from up there. They don't, there's never a reference of an angel saying, I got this information from the kingdom next door, the king and queen, right? The next country over. They have a witch doctor over there. He told me to tell you this. They have a teacher over there that's he says this is how math works. No, it was you should eat this food. It's healthier. No, it was always from up there, from the stars, from the heavens, and they were transferring information. They were messengers. What does that suggest? I mean, there isn't another way to explain it. And let's take it the Jimmy Church step further.
Well,
hold on. No. Let's take it to the Jimmy Church step further. All right. If you are the leader of a little village out in the middle of nowhere, and you're out and ET comes down and gives you some info, and you got to go back to the village and you got to explain to them how you just got this information and why and how they need to listen to you at this moment, you're not going to tell the truth. You can't come back and go, look, man, this little green man stepped off this flying saucer, came up to me and said, hey, this is the easier way to start a fire. And then the dude walked back to his spaceship and went back to Zeta Reticuli. You can't come back to the village with that 5,000 years ago. You can't do it. But what you can do and what you will do is go, so check this out, man. Angel came down of God. And God says, we need to do this. Now the village understands. And now the village is okay because it was God, right? That's an easy way to get this explanation over. So angel and demons and how they are represented not only in the Bible, mythology, dogma over the years is that way because you can't go into the other zone. It's not that they wouldn't believe you. They wouldn't understand. They wouldn't understand what ET is and life on another planet, and they're coming over here, even if the village elder dude understood. And maybe he's confused and he's got to say this is God, right? And what an easy way, an easy form of deduction. How to explain all of this away. Today, it's interdimensional. We get it. Back then, no. And it had to be presented in another way that everybody wouldn't lose their minds, go crazy, freak out, right? No. And that's where I'm at today with all of this, Cristina. Again, I keep saying it. It's a fascinating part of this. And this is what ufology has slowly evolved into because today we're a lot smarter.
And not just that, but we have quite a few people that have actually talked about the extra-dimensional aspect. Now, I want to know in the live chat, let me know if you think some of the UFOs we are seeing are piloted by multidimensionals and what you think about other entities coming from other dimensions. Alan Hynek even talked about this subject, and near his later years, he says, quote, I have come to support less and less the idea that UFOs are nuts and bolts spacecrafts from other worlds. They are just too many things that go against that theory. To me, it seems ridiculous that a technologically advanced race would travel great distances to do relatively stupid things like stop cars, collect soil samples, and frighten people. I think we must begin to re examine the evidence. We must look closer to home for the answer. I think we should consider that UFOs come from other dimensions, a parallel reality, a universe that exists in the same place as ours, but at a different frequency, so to speak.
Bam. And not only and think about when he said this and what years were passing by. Jacques Valet had a lot of influence on this statement, by the way, who was one of his closest friends, and both of them being in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. If you stop and think about that, in one form or another, is that when you I keep saying get smarter. When you acquire knowledge and you keep researching and you're hearing these different aspects of this, and then you go back to what we were taught and what we, and you see that part, and I always use the word dogma there, and you start to combine these, it gets a little bit complicated. And for J. Allen Hynek to back up and go, hey, wait a minute here. Yeah, some of this may be nuts and bolts. Sure, absolutely. Yep. And that's fine. But a large part of this may be something else. There's something simpler here that explains everything, and it makes a lot of sense. And that's where I am today. Let me share one quick little story, which is the now infamous, the famous, the Zorro Z. Now, this sighting, we had a couple of hundred people. We're out on the edge of this cliff, and we're all doing a sky watch. And with not night vision, naked eye in front of us, we're all looking up at the sky. And at that moment, this is what happens. To over on this side, which you're looking at me opposite, but this is to my right. And I see this little light go brrr, like flutter. And it's kind of green, like blue-green. And so anyway, and then it goes bright and it lights up, and then the whole sighting lasts for 2 seconds. 2 seconds. I don't think it was 3. And this thing lights up, and then goes just like this. Let me back up so you can see my hand. It goes, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Gone. That's how long the sighting was. And it took up miles of the sky.
Wow.
Night sky, just right there. And it goes, whoo, whoo, whoo. And as it leaves, it flutters like flashed its high beams and disappears. Now, wait a minute here. Not only do I sound like a crazy person, but everybody there screamed. Everybody saw it at the same time. Everybody was looking to the sky, and this bright green Z, not high, too, not high. I'm going to say a mile up. It was right in front of that long. It appeared and it disappeared. This was physical. It was aquamarine blue green. It did its thing for us. It showed up and then left. It didn't fly away. We didn't watch it fly. No, it appeared and then disappeared. So what do we do with that? Well, look, it's not about my thoughts. Of course, I'm thinking these things, but it's everybody else there. They see something appear in front of us and then disappear. It is exactly how J. Allen Hynek presents it. It's exactly what he is suggesting. Just maybe this is in front of us all the time. There's another parallel dimension to us that is happening right now on another frequency, and we just don't see it. Once in a while, it shows itself, and it showed us there. And that's when I keep going back to this point. The UFO community, what would we have used as an explanation for that 50 years ago? What would we have said? That the craft had lights on it, it was there, and then it turned on its lights and then turned off its lights. We would look at it that way, some physical thing, we didn't grasp this interdimensional parallel world part of this. We see it today, and we immediately are okay with, that was interdimensional. That came from another dimension and went back to where it came from. And I agree with J. Allen Hynek. I agree with Jacques Valet and others, including physicists and scientists today that talk about this, that this is one of the only explanations that makes any sense, Cristina. And I wish you would have been there with us. There are probably people in the chat room right now that were there that night and saw this. It was incredible. It appeared and it split.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for the super sticker. And while we're on this topic, there was a book that I read, and it's called The High Strangeness of Dimensions, Densities, and the Process of Alien Abduction by Laura Knight. And she kind of goes into detail about shape-shifting UFOs. So here it says on June 8th, 2002, a Baptist pastor, while traveling with his family in the western part of the United States, observed a silver aluminum object above the mountains. The pastor said, quote, "When I first noticed the object, it was in the shape of a box and about the size of a small private plane. I tried to show it to my family and I pointed out where to look, taking my eyes off it for a moment. It changed to a round bottom cup shape without the handle. The sighting lasted about 30 seconds. The craft was not in a hurry, really, but seemed just to be cruising around. I don't know how it disappeared. I lost sight of it, trying to point it out to my family after looking away for just a second. Just like with your story, it's in that moment where you don't look is when something happens and you don't know how to explain it, or it simply just disappears. Could it be that they're demonstrating the ability that they are far more able to jump in and out of hyperspace? I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, and so many people bring up hyperspace. That's really good. That's all a possibility. And there is we also think about our technology today, and I always hear suggestions that it was cloaking and it uncloaked itself and it cloaked. Again, some of these may be doing just that. And certainly our technology today with airplanes, there's some battlefield tech that is working on cloaking materials, both active and inactive cloaking materials, and on the underside of planes and things. Okay, yes, I get that. But that's our technology here. To suggest that like this sighting, I like that too, the underside of a cup without the handle on it. Very, very interesting. And that it wasn't really doing anything crazy. It was just like cruising around and then disappears. That to me isn't cloaking. That is an interdimensional thing that is happening. And I can't stress enough with everybody that in the middle of this sighting of the beer can, it's known as the beer can UFO because I said that so early on, but that's what it looked like. Was that when Steve said it just disappeared, it phased out. I have it. I have a recording of it, a videotape of this going down in real time as it's happening. And Steve's description. Well, anyway, I couldn't believe what he just said because now I go back and look, and it was gone. It doesn't make any sense. I thought we were going to see this for an hour. It was just moving across the clear blue sky really slowly. There's no clouds. We're going to see this thing go across forever. It was the most majestic thing. It was incredible, and the excitement, and it disappears. It was like, that to me isn't cloaking. It didn't uncloak itself. It didn't do it. No, it just phased out. And I missed that part of it. I wish I would have seen that more than the original part of the sighting, which was cool. It was great. But I didn't see it phase out. I definitely believe it. There's an interdimensional. Now, there's two things before we run out of time. I think there's two ways to look at this, though. Two. Okay. One, parallel world. Just like J. Allen Hynek describes it, right? There's a version of, and there's another one that's existing right now that we can't see. There's that part. Very strong possibility here. Very. And that what he is suggesting, instead of looking to the stars, let's just think about here. That this is just happening here. It's not, they're not traveling from there to here. They're already here, and we're just witnessing that. Very strong possibility. And at least that explains some of the sightings. The other part, though, is that there may be an interdimensional travel from here to there. And that you would be able to, you have a galaxy here, or let's just say a planet here and a planet here, and this planet over here is 1,000 light years away. You know, I don't know how many astronomical units we're talking about, but it's a lot. It's 1,000 light years away. All you do for them is you eliminate the space in between. Okay? You eliminate the space in between. That's all you're doing. So some call it folding space, right? There's that. You take a piece of paper and you have point A, here's Earth, and here's point B, the planet and then you take it and you fold it, and then you merely just, that's the distance you travel, right?
Right.
Okay. So that's the other part of this, where you're taking the distance in between, that parallel space, distance, linear thing, and you simply remove that. And the Alcubierre drive speaks about this too as well, which is a warp drive. You brought up hyperspace earlier, where you literally, like I said, you step on the craft, you press the button on your GPS, and then you walk back out the door. That's it. You're already here. It's a spacecraft. It's doing its thing. You can't do it without the spacecraft, but that would explain it. And now inside and outside of our atmosphere, it takes care of that answer too as well. So, and maybe we're seeing a combination of both, that there is a lot of different extraterrestrial race number one may be doing it differently than extraterrestrial race 2050, and everybody in between. They have their own ways of doing it. But however they are doing it, I believe that it's easy and it's simple. And once we understand it, it'll be simple to us too as well.
I sure do hope so, because the fact that practically all the craft that we've covered on this show are transmedium objects, right? They can travel in space and also here in our atmosphere, some in the ocean as well. So it just makes me question. It opens so many doors of just more questions. Deborah says, Christina, my information says the craft are piloted telepathically with nobody on board. Seriously. I have heard a few stories like that, not too many, but what you know, there are also some alien abduction accounts talk about them having their consciousness or their actual soul or astral body being abducted into a strange environment that appears like another dimension. And that's kind of scary. I mean, can the soul be stolen? And do such things as this, if true, these anecdotal accounts, do they prove there's an afterlife? Well, in 1951, in the Californian desert, an avid spiritualist named George Van Tassel was deep in meditation when his astral form was scooped up into a spaceship and given a tour of Space Brothers by Space Brothers, who later appeared to him in real physicality. He later referred to these beings as Nordics. These Nordics were handsome looking, tallish, human looking creatures with longish, fine hair that blew gently in the breeze.
Right.
And this was the beginning of a decade-long space brotherly affair between humanity and the Nordics.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for those that don't know much about the Nordics, we actually covered a show on that of multiple alien species. It was like a three-part show. And I found this story rather interesting because, again, does something like this, having an astral form, show that there could possibly be an afterlife? And how could an astral body just be scooped up and placed in a spacecraft, at which he says it appeared in real physicality? I have so many questions.
George Van Tassel, one of the most incredible personalities in all of ufology. Now, for those of you that don't know, there's plenty out there on George Van Tassel, but George Van Tassel had his sightings at Giant Rock. Now, Giant Rock is the biggest rock on Earth, and it sits out in Joshua Tree. And you can drive out there. I have been there. It's you've never seen anything this big. It's the biggest rock in the world. And so when you think about how big is it, Jimmy, it's the size of a frigging planet, right? And it's sitting out in the desert, and you see it, I don't know, it's 10, 15 stories tall. It's the same size. It's big. But anyway, underneath this, he built a house. He dug it out, and he had a restaurant down there. His wife made these very famous pies, Howard Hughes. He had an airstrip next to it, and planes would come in. So while he was doing all of that, and he worked for Hughes Corporation at the time, very smart guy, engineer. Goes back to what I said about the village elder 5,000 years ago and encountering, an angel or an ET and coming back with information. This is what happened with George Van Tassel. And George Van Tassel's story, if it would have been told 5,000 years ago, now we're talking about angels and demons and messengers of God. Because this saucer comes down, lands, he goes outside, sees it, encounters this Nordic, has a conversation, and gets this relationship going. He was given information all the time. One of them, he was given the instructions on how to build the Integratron, this life rejuvenation machine, which is right next to Giant Rock. You can go and visit that. It is incredible. It's still there today. They got a nice museum and a gift shop, and you can go and check it out. It's amazing. So the Integratron. Also, they gave him some equations. And with this math, he was able to build a time viewing recorder and machine in Santa Monica, California. There's interviews about this. You can go and check it out. So they give him this piece of math, and he is able to go back and check out history 6 years before. Not 7, not 8, not 10, can't go back 2,000 years, but they gave him the ability to build this machine and view back recorded history 6 years. That's right. Given to him by a Nordic extraterrestrial. And now, if we take that story and think about the other parts of history, whether it's the Jinn, St. Michael, I don't care wherever you want to go, it's the same story.
It seems like it is, and as we've heard so many times, history repeats itself. So let's talk a little bit about Skinwalker Ranch and the creatures and the portals observed on Skinwalker Ranch and even Bradshaw Ranch in Arizona.
Mhm.
I think there are places like this all around the world. It's not just Skinwalker Ranch, it's not just Bradshaw Ranch, but it could very well, there could be multiple locations that just have a cluster of all of these things happening, these weird crypto creatures, these portals, and so on and so forth. So I know we've talked about Skinwalker Ranch a few times, and even around that area and all of these kinds of mystical areas, you also have people missing without a trace, and like detailed in many missing 411 cases. Why do you think all that's happening in one area?
We can't. Yeah. Oh man, I believe that there are certain points on this planet where things happen, and that there are certain individuals that can pick up on what is going on now. And if we go, forget about today with technology and being able to measure magnetic things and electromagnetic and points of the earth and things, metals and quartz and crystals and things that would be measurable in certain geographic locations. But if you didn't have that technology, 5,000 years ago when they're building Stonehenge, but somebody was walking around going, you know what, we're going to do it right. Hold on. Right here. This is the spot. People have the ability. There's dowsing and there's other things. I think all of this is real. But, the Great Pyramids, Machu Picchu, the Sun Pyramid in Mexico, all the Mayan pyramids, these locations here in the United States, they go on all around the world. Gobekli Tepe. Why would they specifically pick a spot when they don't have the coordinates that we have today? And then we go back, and you and I have talked about this before, but now we go back with modern technology, and we're going, wait a minute, all of these very special places around the world where these things have been claimed over the years, portals, magical spots, things that have been going on. And then we find out that these are very specific geographic points that also relate to each other. How do ancient people, without the technology of knowing this, pick these specific spots? The portals and these energies. If you go to, we know about Stonehenge and Gobekli Tepe and the Great Pyramid of Egypt and Machu Picchu. Okay, we know these locations. Giant rock. You go out to Joshua Tree, and if on any given night, and if you don't see something special in the sky, you're not looking. It's crazy what goes on out there. That Zorro Z I was just telling you about, that was next to Giant Rock, Cristina. That was next to Giant Rock. Right now, what is happening here? So yeah, I absolutely believe. Now, Skinwalker Ranch, haven't been there. Okay. Bradshaw Ranch, haven't been there. I got the feeling I'm going to be there in a couple of months, though. We'll let everybody know what is going on out there, but I may go out there and speak. But what is specifically is going on with these locations? Bradshaw Ranch and Skinwalker Ranch, and now Blind Frog Ranch. These locations have reports of some of the most fantastical portal action anywhere in the world. And so, what is it about these spots? Hopefully we'll get to the science side of this, and I know that they're working on that up at Skinwalker for sure. I hope we get the information. Spoke to Jacques Valet about this too as well. He's compiled it and put it into a database. But the science is going to help us understand more what is going on with these locations, and the phenomena is real. What's the why behind it, and how is it happening?
Well, there seems to be a connection with granite and quartz and magnetic fields. Maybe the walls between our dimension and others, or parallel realms, do occur naturally at certain times. And I wonder if technology at some point will take advantage of it or duplicate them in a lab. That's what we need.
Yeah, check this out. And I know we're out of time. I went, maybe things have changed a little bit today. I haven't done anything, in the last month on this subject. But when you're a kid and you get a couple of magnets and you feel the force in between them, right? And you're like, wow, what's going on there? Right. And you can't see it, right? They can't explain that. Can't explain that today. It's really weird. And now they've got these theoretical explanations on why magnets attract. They know the materials that do it, and then the opposite force where they repel each other. All right, it's kind of that, but really, honestly, they don't know. The same thing when you're talking about quartz and granite and minerals in the earth that have these properties going on. The ancients knew. The ancients knew about these locations, and they knew that there were special things going on without being able to measure it with all of this scientific equipment and data. It's fascinating to me. Yeah, so somebody explain to me, tell me that you definitively know how magnets attract and repel each other, because nobody can.
No.
It's crazy, man. It's unbelievable, but yet these very magical places are built around locations that have something going on geographically, electromagnetically, magnetically, different properties. Again, quartz and crystals and granites which are loaded with crystals. So yeah, there's something going on. And then you go and you build a great pyramid out of what? Right? Red granite. It's crazy. It's crazy. I love it. What a great show today. I had so much fun. You have a good time?
Oh, without a doubt. I always have fun with you. Deborah says Stonehenge is obviously a giant granite birthday cake or a prison, far too easy to escape. Talking about magnets, and I'm not the only one, but whenever we had to learn them in school, I would always try to force them to be together when they kept repelling. And like when they touched, I just felt this sense of like, yes, I did it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, magnets are fascinating.
Oh, they're
Absolutely
so much fun.
Absolutely.
They're so much fun.
But they don't know the how or why. It's crazy.
At least not yet. At least not yet. On a side note, I'm really looking forward to the movie Doctor Strange and the Multiverse. Talking about what we're talking about today, I feel like
out? When is that coming out?
I think soon, pretty soon. Let me check just to make sure.
No, hold on, I'll find out right now. I have this new thing. It's called I got it last week. It's called the Interbox. And so I can plug into this and find stuff out.
Well, it comes out May 6th.
May 6th? Oh, you got me all excited? Man.
Because I'm excited for it. I feel like right now is the perfect time to talk about it because it's about that exact thing. Now, I personally love Doctor Strange's character by Benedict Cumberbatch. I mean, his the way he holds his like superhero. I don't know if I would classify him as a superhero, but I love the way he portrays his character. Now,
have you seen Shang-Chi?
I haven't. Is it good?
Okay, so you remember in the original Doctor Strange?
Yes.
his Japanese buddy.
Yes.
Okay. So Shang-Chi, which you need to check out. And by the way, there's a TV show out of Canada called Kim's Convenience. Have you seen it?
No.
Okay. That's it. The show's over. I'm done. I can't take
No,
this
come
anymore.
back.
Can't take it. Okay. Kim's Convenience. That's what you're going to do. You're going to binge all 6 seasons. Incredible. It's about a little convenience store called Kim's Convenience in Toronto. A Korean family runs it. Very cute. Very awesome show. Anyway, Kim's brother is Shang-Chi. Okay, so that's why I remember watching them. I'm like, that's the dude from Kim's Convenience. Anyway, so and this takes place in China. You need to go watch the movie. But who shows up? But Doctor Strange's buddy from Doctor Strange. And there is, I'm not going to give away the end of the movie or how Shang-Chi plays out, but the whole dimensional portal thing that they do which is coming out in the new movie, and the ability to jump through portals and through time with this happens in Shang-Chi, and Homeboy shows up. I forget his name in Doctor Strange. So there's this overlap with Shang-Chi and Doctor Strange. So hopefully we'll see that in this the new Doctor Strange movie, that the two are going to be connected.
Oh, now I have to watch it. Now I have to watch this movie you're talking about. Ronan, thank you so much for the super sticker. Talking about today's show, we'll be doing more shows looking at some of the things that we have brought up in today's show in the future. Now, Jimmy, you do not have Fader Night tonight. Instead, who is your guest?
It was a last minute thing, and I just had to bring somebody on to fill the night, so I just made a phone call. I got a friend of mine, Linda. I said, "Hey, are you free tonight?" And she said, "Absolutely." And so tonight, her name's Linda Moulton Howe, and luckily, she said, I've got tonight free, Jimmy, so I'm going to come hang out with you. So yeah, no Fader Night tonight, no open lines. We have Linda Moulton Howe with us, and a little small subject called disclosure in 2022. It's going to be midnight tonight on the show. It's going to be great. So we'll see you there. Everybody else, thank you so much. I'm going to get out of here. I'm taking up all of Christina's valuable time. I'll see everybody tonight on the show. And wow, what a great show today. Thank you so much, Christina. Now, fire up those chopsticks and let me know how that ramen works out for you. I'll see everybody tonight on the show.
I will. Bye, Jimmy. And that is it for today's show, talking about extra-dimensionals. Hopefully, you guys found it as fun as I did, because when you're bringing in the anecdotal accounts with actual science and you put them together, as you could tell, I could not stop smiling. I was just so excited for today's topic. And with the movie Doctor Strange in the Multiverse, I am ready for May to come over so I can go ahead and watch that movie. Thank you so much for everyone for watching, for your super chats, your super stickers, all the Patreons. And just a reminder, I have listed all of the books in the information section below that I use for today's research. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies.